Everybody, it's Pat Windrow again at the Cable Easel with part 2 of a study of the First Parish Church of Northville, Long Island, New York. A lovely little piece of architecture that I talked about sort of at great length in the first program, and this is going to be the wind-up. Hopefully there will be enough interest here in what I'm doing for you to go and look at this little gem, and to also maybe even attempt to, there's the monitor that tells you that the First Parish Church is the United Church of Christ, and it's a sign, nicely lettered and very legible sign that is outside of this church. A little bit northeast of Riverhead, just about 10 miles beyond the end of the LIE. It's in a perfectly wonderful part of the world. Long Island has got these really remarkable places tucked away, and it's only because you either fall upon them accidentally, or you happen to pick up a Hagstrom map and you find that here is a place that has been in existence, this building particularly, since 1905, I believe. Yes. 1902 is the year of the building of this particular church. Before that, there was another one on these grounds, probably towards the middle of the last century. And so this little gem has been around for a good long time, and available for you to go and peruse if you want to. Sound Avenue is the name of the street, and Church Lane is the north-south street, which will take you to it. I think it's always interesting to know that right here in your own backyard you've got these things that you can go and check out on your own. Sightseeing is a very strange pastime. A lot of people depend upon the glossy, glitzy brochures that are put out by travel agencies, but in my opinion, the smart ones are the ones that go and find it on their own, and a journey of discovery takes place at the same time. So there it is. Where I'm dealing with the light and shade of this architectural gem, but also in the painter's eye it's an architectural nightmare, because there are so many elements going on at the same time. However, I'm not going to talk about the nightmare, but I'm going to talk about the intrigue which these things afford when you are out there trying to do what you might call a competent rendering of a particular place. Rendering places is also a lovely pastime, because the next thing you know, you probably don't go back there, and you are able to recall all of the thoughts that you've had while you were doing it. You cannot help but think about the places that you're looking at while you're doing it. I find a great deal going on in my head when I am observing these places as carefully. And my problem with the programs that do not use observation as the main tool of painting is that the experience is missing. Copying a photograph or doing something out of one's imagination is limited. It's extremely limited. Even though your flights of fancy can go into many different places, the experience of being there and understanding what you're looking at is of vital importance. I'm doing details in this one because the sunlight and the shadows was sort of taken care of in the first program. I do hope you were able to see it. And here is the application of the details. As you might guess, for a program this short, details have to be kept into a very rough form, but nevertheless they can be applied, and the roughness of a thing sometimes gives a nice painterly look about it. This window is divided into an interesting way. It is divided not down the middle, but down the sides, and giving you this form, which of course to me is an architectural interest, because most things are divided down the middle. We seem to be chained to the idea of dividing things right down the center. When you find yourself introduced to something which deviates from that, it's always extremely interesting. I think one of the interesting parts of this building is that it deviates from having everything centered. There is a nice calculated and pleasing imbalance about these towers here. One of them is taller than the other one. One of them is of the same proportion, but it has a different place. And actually, this center window is not in the center because there is the side building that eliminates that. It is off to the side. So the architectural interest of these things is what I find interesting, finding your own subject matter. For heaven's sakes, do not go and copy somebody else's work. You run the risk of finding a bad artist that you're copying, and you also run the risk of not being individual about your approach to selection of these subjects. You can select these subjects on your own, and of course the trick is to know your limitations before you start making selections, and then gradually work up to the more complicated things. Let me see what happens over here. Ah, yes, this ends here, and I do believe that the sun is still hitting this place, and the angle of this shadow is very definitely all very much the same angles of shadows. That's something to be concerned with when you're working from life. I see up here that the sun has caught the little parapet that's above this tower, giving a nice delineation and demarcation between the roof, the pent roof, and this little tower up here. There is also a center column which is catching a little bit of light, and a part of this archway is catching some light, and the rest of it is in rather dense shadow, except this has got a little bit of light here. The details are one of the things that makes people interested, I think, in my work, because I do pay attention to them. We all live with detail, but I don't think we realize how influential they are in our lives. We are surrounded with detail, and we are very concerned with it, namely something as mundane and as commonplace and as important as the buying of a car. The details on a car sometimes determine the sale of that particular automobile. The details of a house determine the sale of that house. So as the same thing applies in painting. If you pay attention to the details, the painting will become alluring in ways that it wouldn't be if it didn't have the details. The details are that the sun is playing tricks and games on these planes. Right here, because everything else is thrown into shadow, you will find that this column, a little part of this arch here is catching some light, and also this column is almost in total sunshine, and it's probably because it extends past the roof line. And here you have one little column bathed in light, which gives it a nice three-dimensional quality. The other column, part of it is caught in light. The rest, where is that? Oh, it's here. Part of it is in light, and this is what happens with that one. The stairs are in total shadow, and part of the sill of this window is in light. All right, now, and we've got to go over to the other side. As I say, this is an architect's dream, but also a painter's nightmare because of the things that have to be attended to. This window is divided in another way. The architect was able to have another interesting thing happening here. It's divided into 3 rather than 5 or 4 or 2. The one below it is divided into 2 parts, a top and a bottom. This little archway is part of the design of the other windows, but it is a different configuration with the division of 2. It's the same as this one over here. So the architectural qualities of this building are to be found out as you work on it. I find that it's always nice to be able to point these things out to people, because most people are interested in what they're looking at. The trouble is that many people, because they are not painters, have not bothered to investigate the possibilities of all these details. And I will guarantee, or try to guarantee, that anybody who looks at this church is going to notice the details that I have been pointing out for the last few minutes. And the roof line of this triangle here, of the so-called center part of the building, of which there is not really a center part, is paler gray than the other roof line because it is in shadow. And then we have the darkness of the roof that is going to come in. We also have something which is called Greek revival, a Greek revival interest here in what is called, when the roof line returns at a particular place, that is called a Greek revival design. And it's quite fascinating. If you look at it and you remember the term, you'll be that much further ahead of the people who haven't bothered to figure that one out. I would say that somewhere with the introduction of this Greek revival, the very sharp triangles, and also the introduction of all these rectangles and squares, that there may be something applied here called Gothic something or other, Reformed Gothic something or other. I would love it if somebody was watching this program were to write to me. Maybe even an architect himself would be able to enlighten me about the terminology of this kind of architecture. It is full of whimsy, it's full of wonderful imagination, and it also is full of interest. It can't possibly fail to interest the people who are looking at it. Your eye will travel from one place to the other in it and discover new things as it goes along. This is a shadow of this particular of the molding of this thing, and it goes off at an angle because of the position of the sun. The windowsill goes off at an angle also because of the position of the sun, and this is all in observation. You couldn't possibly remember this, even if you have an excellent recall. And there are details here that you would not be able to memorize, and that's why working from life is much easier in its way than you think. A lot of people are intimidated by working from life, but when the chips are down, the information that you need is all right here in front of you. All you have to do is to refer to it. These are the shadows being cast by these columns, reduced to a very simple form of a straight line to show the shadow between the columns. I believe there is another column here that is light. So I'm going to rinse the brush and deal a little bit more with some of the other details of the surroundings of this church. This church obviously has been here for a long time. There are some rather elegant trees surrounding it, and there is also these remarkably beautiful bushes. And before the time comes to an end, I want to be able to deal with these bushes. Here is this column. The shadow hits it at this level here, and I'm trying to remain as steady as possible. And then there actually are two columns there. But the light comes higher because of the angle of the sun. I hope that all of this is interesting, as interesting as it is to me to see how all this takes place. It is, oops, wrong. Okay, now there is the need to put in the wonderful shadow lines of this clapboard. And now I'm not going to dwell on it too long, but I have to show you that without the clapboard you have not really dealt with the architecture of this building. This building is built of clapboard siding. Therefore, it's got to be put in. I'm using a maul stick. I'm leaning my hand on here, and I'm going to give you just a bare suggestion of how you would indicate this clapboard siding. It requires something of a steady hand. It requires the right temperature, not temperature, it's texture of paint. It has to be fluid enough to be able to flow smoothly. And it's got to be fairly faithful to the placement, to the distance between these things, because clapboard is particular onto a certain period in architecture. We have clapboard today in aluminum siding, which is unmistakably aluminum, not because of the aluminum, but because of the size of the siding. The siding that is aluminum is a different size as real wooden siding. I don't know why they didn't imitate it, but they didn't. And it is minuscule difference, but it is there nevertheless. This gives you the story of that siding. It is to be repeated endlessly as you do this entire building, and I'm not going to continue. I just wanted to show you how one would handle it. You handle it in a very interpretive way. Try, of course, to keep them fairly horizontal and fairly equidistant, because well, it would be silly to make it look, to make it uneven. It's not the character of the building, and it certainly wouldn't be the period. So here is approximately the way that you would do it. These architectural paintings take a tremendous amount of time, and they also take a lot of attention to detail. But because of this demonstration, I'm hoping that all of this is see, I'm getting a little bit crooked here, but you get the general idea. Now, and as I close the show, I will continue this this business of putting these architectural details in. The windows up here are dark. Let me see if they are dark. I've got to get that in there. I'm using some Van Dyke brown and a touch of black to indicate the recesses of this particular these particular arches up here. I'm going to take a break for just a minute. Don't go away. I'll be right back. Here we are back again for the final conclusion to this study of a very complicated but extraordinarily beautiful structure in Northville called the First Parish Church of Northville. I've spoken about it because this is the last 15 or so odd minutes of this program, and I'm as usual racing with time, but I want to show you how the details are important in a painting such as this, albeit that they are extremely difficult. Here is another window that I believe is divided into 3 sections. The nice little sort of triangle up there's got something to do with the Trinity, I'm sure, not being a theologian, but I'm guessing that it's got something to do, when things are divided into 3 in a church, it would seem to me that that would be the Trinity being represented somehow. I'm putting little details in as you go, but I said earlier that I want to deal with these wonderful blooming azaleas because there's probably nothing more cinching for a painting to be successful than to have beautifully blooming bushes out in front of a white structure. Who could possibly argue with anything as great as that? And of course, everything, as I mention every time I do this, everything has got a light side and a dark side. The same thing goes for the bushes. I'm going to do the bushes in the back first because there are other bushes in front of it. So the little green ones of these azalea bushes that have not that have bloomed and have now turned just to leaves are the first ones in the rear, and then come the pink ones in the front. So if I have the pardon me, I'm going to clear a frog. Here is the shadowy side of this azalea bush. Very loosely interpreted, but nevertheless important to be there because we are dealing in 3 dimensions. We're dealing with things that have roundness, form, and mass. So anything even as plain as an azalea bush, just as an adjunct. This is not part of the church. It just happens to be a bonus in the composition of this church. You put it in and you pay attention to even the slightest kind of informational detail on things like the shadow and sunlit side of an azalea bush. So here are the green ones. I believe there is one down here that is in deep shadow, and so it's just all quite dark. Because it's probably standing behind the other one, but that's what makes for the nice drama of these things and the intense interest that makes it look a little bit more than just a photograph or even a cover story in an architecture magazine. I like to be able to make things look as though they were intended to be part of a painting as opposed to an illustration in a publication someplace. It's hard. It is very easy to fall into the trap of having things look like illustrations on postcards. And I'm sure that if you go through Northville, you'll be able to find a postcard with this church that will look like a photograph. I'm trying to avoid the looking of a photograph with this particular painting. As long as I have green on my brush, I'm going to just quickly sketch in this nice and very cooperative tree over on the left side that does a nice sort of job of framing this whole thing in. And I can put its light areas in later, but use the paint on your brush. That's the whole secret of working quickly, to not to take advantage of every possible opportunity to save time, such as removing this paint. Besides that, it's wasteful. To use all that paint is a very good idea. All right, now comes the time to make the brush absolutely clean. That means 3 or 4 dips into the turpentine, which is now getting progressively darker as the painting progresses, and to get a clean towel. I used to start this program off a long time ago by saying, having my little logo of keep your brushes clean. Well, I've said that often enough to make even me sick, so I don't say it anymore. And I'm using something called Geranium Lake. It is the most vibrant, glamorous color you can imagine, and to me it probably is exactly what I should use on these very gorgeous pink blooming azaleas. And you can see that pink. I hope that pink is as brilliant to you as it is here on my palette. This one is a very big one, and I suppose that you can say that these azaleas are tenderly cared for by whomsoever takes care of these grounds, because they really are perfectly placed. And this is the time of year to be able to catch their act, as it were. There are 4 azalea bushes. Let's be sure that I don't commit the problem of not counting them properly. And they, of course, have a dark side, which is just a little bit more intense pink than the sunlit part. And they may be a little bit more orange than this, but I can't resist this color, which is called Geranium Lake. It's an expensive color. I think it's shockingly $9 for a very small tube, but you use very little. I'll probably not live long enough to use the rest of this tube of Geranium Lake, which is what is the name of this color. But it certainly accomplishes its purpose when you have to need suddenly a lot of very bright pink. You need to have it at your command, and so the price is worth it. I keep it secretly in the bottom of the paint box and only squeeze it out on my palette when I know I'm going to need it. In other words, when I'm going to be doing a beach scene in which this color will not be needed at all, I don't squeeze it out, because that is blatantly wasteful of a very expensive tool. So here we have. And this little one is in total shadow because apparently it's being shaded by the porch of this little area right here. Just things to pay attention to. I have here the roof line of the little porch that sticks out on the, obviously I believe, the west side of the building. It's quite dark, but the sun is catching it in a little triangle, which is another part of the details which is to be used in the observation, and the column on the other side of it is in total shadow. However, with the introduction of white, I'm going to get the pale color of that little roof, which is obviously a little gray roof, but when it gets a lot of shadow on it, it becomes very dark. But here is the little part of the gray roof that is catching the light. That may or it may not come across, but that nevertheless it is there. I need to show you a little bit more of the column arrangement here on the side. there are two columns here with one line dividing them of shadow, and that's probably all I would need to do here. I don't talk when I do straight lines. There we go. Oops, all the way. The steps of this little porch here are in shadow also, and they are naturally, they're white steps, but they have to be gray because they're in shade. And then as I don't know quite how much time is left, but not enough for me to fool around with things like more oh, it's incredible. I've got to put the I have a wonderful ability to look up, and there is a very helpful hand in the shadows telling me just how many minutes I have left. I'm going to mix up some very dark green and sketch in against the dark sky this silhouetted tree. The silhouetted tree has some leaves that are against the blue sky, and the rest of it is quite dark. The chimney will have to be sketched in, and when we finally get all these paintings accumulated and you are able to see this, I will have refined it and put in all the missing links. But this is the way this is what the kind of a job that this tree over here has to do. It encloses the whole thing in a nice natural and free-form frame of this great tree, which I assume is something, probably a Norway maple of something, which is they're prevalent all over the island, and they grow to huge heights and do wonderful things to the look of the place. The building here, this building is in sunlight because it's being because there is sun back there, but a lot of it is in shade, and that would be of course the background for this blooming pink dogwood, which of course there is a window back here, dark window here, and the pink dogwood is going to be, some green has already manifested itself. And then there is, from what I can see here, there is another bunch of azalea bushes that are blooming on the other side. Whoever decided to plant in front of this church had some wonderful feeling about color and accents of color. It is always gratifying to see that somebody has had enough sense of color to be able to introduce the right color scheme. This church, being obviously as white as it is, needed a great deal of color in the front of it, and by golly, they have done it with these azaleas. In the wintertime, I'm sure that they sort of recede into the background and become dull and sort of smoky green, but right now they are flamboyant in their audacious blooming. Here in the front is going to show you the brilliantly sunlit grass that is in the front of this building, and I think that probably I can sweep across here with a nice very painterly type of lawn arrangement. You see, when you pull the paint across, you get a nice sort of interpretive feeling about what is happening. And apparently this grass in the front is all bathed in sun. The shadows have not set in yet, and it gives a lift to the whole thing that the grass in front of this church is really now in full bloom. Well, the signal has come. I have come to the unfortunate timing whereby I've got to end this, but that's okay. I'm going to stop complaining about that. Time is what it is. And so hoping that this whole exercise in a very complicated architectural painting has given you some insight as to whether or not you want to tackle this and whether or not it's worth the effort. I personally of course think it was worth the effort to show you how to do it, because everything is worth the effort if there is somebody interested. Don't forget, I am on the air more times than I can even remember during the week, and tune in. I hope that you can catch me, and I hope that it can be interesting enough for you to stay tuned. In the meantime, bye-bye, and thanks again for watching. This is me signing off. Bye-bye.